I wish I could remember the date. I wonder if I have it written in a journal, because I don't know exactly when it was, but I used to live in Erlanger. I've taught down here. People keep asking me, how long have you been in Ludlow? This was my 21st year as a teacher at Ludlow, and this is my 24th year teaching, but my 21 of them have been here in Ludlow, and I used to live in Erlanger. And I remember I was driving up Sleepy Hollow. It was spring. It was like April, May, it was around this time of year. And I just felt like God said to me, Stephanie, I want you to move to Ludlow. And I was like, I literally started crying, like, I don't want to move to Ludlow. I love my house. I had the best neighbors ever. My neighbor, she used to work at McHale's Catering, and I would come home today some days and there'd just be food in my fridge. She had a key to my house, she'd just come put food in my fridge. Like, they were the most, we kind of had a race to see who could mow each other's lawn. You know, like if I hear her out there, I'm like, dang it, she beat me. You know, like they were the best neighbors ever. I lived right off the interstate, right there near Lloyd High School. I had super easy access to get anywhere I wanted. I had this cute little house. I had a big fenced-in yard for my dog. It was great. I loved my house. And so when the Lord said, I want you to move, I was like, I don't want to leave my house. I love my house. And do I want to live where I teach? I don't know if I want to do that, Lord. Like, what if I want to just walk around in my scrubby clothes? Do I care if people see me? So I'm the kind of person who comes home and goes for a walk, because I used to have a dog, and the second I got home, he went and stood in front of the dresser, like, come on, let's go. And so I would go for a walk, and I would listen to podcasts, and I used to listen to a lot of Greg Boyd. He's a preacher out of St. Paul, Minneapolis, and a friend of mine had recommended Joyce Meyer. And I remember I was about to put on Greg Boyd, and I was like, oh, I should try Joyce Meyer. I'm like, all right, Joyce, I'll give you a shot. And so I put on this Joyce Meyer podcast, and I'm walking, and she's talking about, what is God asking you to give up? What is God asking you to step out in faith? And she starts talking about, is he asking you to give away your car? Is he asking you to give it? She's like, is there something in your closet that God is asking you to give up? And I was like, he wants me to give up my whole closet and the house it's in. And I was very sad, but I learned at a young age that when your dad says to do something, you just do it. Because if you don't, he's gonna make things harder for you. Like, that's how it was in my house. If I didn't do what my dad said, I regretted it. So I just learned it was better to go along to get along. And so when God says, I need you to do something, I'm gonna go along to get along. So I painted my house all neutral colors, and I redid the floors, and I redid the lawn. I did all this stuff and got it show ready. And I went to a friend of mine, he was a realtor, and I said, the Lord wants me to sell my house. I need to sell my house. And he's like, I lived on Commonwealth Avenue. If you guys know, like the Erlanger exit, that was my road. Like, you got off the exit and then you turned in my driveway. So very busy road. I had a 1-bedroom house on a very busy road. And my friend who's the realtor is like, I mean, I'll list it for you, but nobody's gonna buy a 1-bedroom house on a busy road. I said, well, God said to do it, so we're gonna do it. So I listed it, and I had to live show clean. If any of you have ever sold a house while you're still living in it, I hate it. I'm not a messy person, but I'm not a super neat person. So to live show clean for months was terrible. But I did. I lived show clean for months. And finally it just went off the market because it had been on the market for so long. I had hardly anybody came to see it. And I was like, all right, God, like, I obeyed you. I did what you said. It didn't sell. But I just knew from then on that I would live in Ludlow one day. I just knew it. I didn't know when, I didn't know how. And so a year or two later, my assistant coach, her grandpa had passed away, and she said, my dad is finally ready to let go of the house. And I had been praying about, I said, Lord, I need a garage, and I want to be in this neighborhood, and I want to be able to walk to school. Like, I had my things that I wanted. I want a porch. And so she said, it has all the amenities that you want. Do you want to come see it? Well, I expected to walk in the door and be like, oh, this is it. I did not. I walked in and I was like, yeah, it's fine. But that day, I went home after I saw the house, and I went for my customary walk, and while I was walking, I was praying about it, And God showed me living in that house full of people, like having people over. And I was like, well, that's going to be my house. And so I had to put my house back on the market. And I was talking to a different realtor friend of mine. I said, well, I found the house that I'm going to live in, but I've got to list my house, and he's going to have to wait until I sell it. And my realtor friend's like, no seller is going to wait for you to sell your house, and you're not going to be able to sell a one-bedroom house on a busy street without losing a bunch of money. I'm like, well, I don't have a bunch of money to lose, so God's going to have to figure it out. So I got a different realtor this time, and my house is on the market for months. Again, I had to live show clean for months. But finally, my realtor, she sold my house. And I bought the house I live in, and now I live in Ludlow, and I very often thank the Lord because it has every amenity I wanted and more. Like, I didn't even know I liked hiking, but my new house is right by the pool, and there's a hiking trail there. I love to swim. I love to go hiking. Like, I have the most amazing neighbors. When I told people I live on Howard Street, and they're like, that's the best street in Ludlow. And they're right. I love my street. I love my neighbors. And the Lord came through, but it took years. And a lot of people saying, you're crazy. You are not going to be able to sell that house. You're nuts. But I was like, God said it's going to happen, so it's going to happen. And we've got to remember that sometimes God says he's going to come through for us. He's going to do something with us, through us, and then nothing happens. And the Bible is filled with stories when God says this is going to happen, and nothing happens. Or the opposite happens, right? So today I'm going to tell a Bible story, Paula's all-time favorite Bible story, the quintessential God don't make no sense story of the Bible, and that is the story of Noah and the ark. Any of you who've grown up with the church, you know the story. When I was a kid at my great-grandma's house, we had the ark and the little animal toys, and we played with them. And the picture books always show, like, Noah and his family with the happy little elephant and giraffe. They don't show all the people dying outside the ark, but they show the happy little scene on the ark. But it's really a story of faith, because Noah was old. And I want you to really think about, God comes to you and says, I want you to build a ship the size of a skyscraper with just your family. You'd be like, God, you crazy. So here's the story. Here's the picture. By the way, the ark is huge. And if you have not been, we're fortunate that we live near a replica of the ark, and it's ginormous. Those little cones, those are full-size Christmas trees. And if you want to go like a cool light display at Christmas time, it's worth it. It is worth the drive. It's worth the money. It is a really cool thing. It is lit up like awesome. It's really cool. So this is the ark. It is huge. And here's what story. So the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on earth, and that every inclination and thought of the human heart was only evil. And the Lord regretted that he'd even made human beings, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I'm going to wipe the face of the earth with this human race that I have created, and with the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. So if you read the Hebrew Bible, that's the story of God's people. In the very beginning, we have Adam and Eve, and they messed everything up, and then their kids were populating the earth for hundreds of years, and they all became jerks. Everybody forgot all about God. And God's like, man, well, that was a failed experiment like the dinosaurs. I don't know if the dinosaurs were a failed experiment, but he's like, I'm going to do like I did with the dinosaurs. I'm just going to wipe it all out and start over. But as he looked across the earth at all the jerks, he's like, wait, there's one. I can't wipe out the earth, but there's even one that's good. And so the earth was so corrupt in God's sight and full of violence, God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth were corrupt in his ways except for Noah. And so God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all these people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I'm going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark out of cypress wood, make in it rooms and coat it with pitch inside and out. And so he gave him the dimensions. I didn't put it all on there. He gave him the dimensions of what this ark would look like. I want you to really think for a minute. I want you to imagine that God comes to you and says, everyone on earth is a jerk. So you and your family, he had 3 sons. I want you, just you 5 people, to make a boat the size of a skyscraper. And then we're going to put a bunch of animals in it. And when I destroy the whole earth, just you guys are going to live. Can you imagine building a boat the size of a skyscraper in your backyard when you're 75 years old? Well, no, he was like 400 years old. That comes later. It took 75 years. They estimate 75 years he built this boat. Here's how big it is. Here's just a little snip. I mean, how incredible is that? All those animals just showing up. He didn't have to go. Like, I always worry, like, how am I going to do this when I was selling my house? How am I going to sell this house? How am I going to get this accomplished? And God's like, stop. You don't have to accomplish it. I'm going to do it. I said I'd do it, and I'm going to do it. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to understand it. It doesn't have to make sense to you. Just do it. Just do what I said. It says, so Noah and his sons and his wife, they entered the ark to escape the water. So after this happened, all the pairs of clean and unclean animals, the birds and the creatures that move along the ground, male and female, they came to Noah. They entered the ark as God commanded Noah. And after 7 days, the floodwaters came on the earth. In the 600th year, Noah was 600 years old. I cannot imagine how my knees would feel after 600 years. 600 years. On the 17th day of the 7th month, on the day all the springs of the great deep burst forth and the floodgates of heaven were opened and the rain fell on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. So imagine the most torrential rainstorm you've ever been in for 40 full days. Not only that, geysers of water coming up from the ground. Now, I know what some of us probably are thinking, Stephanie, that's a great kid story. But there's no way that actually happened. That's just a myth that we tell our kids. But scientists have found lots and lots of evidence that about 5,000 years ago, in the area of the Black Sea where this would have happened, there was a massive flood. Now, people have tried to find the ark. Some people have said they have found the ark, but the ark was made out of wood. I don't know how many wooden structures would still be around after 2,000 years. Many people have said they have found the ark, but then they kind of proved them to be wrong. But they do have evidence that there was a massive flood in that area of the world. And a lot of other cultures report stories of a massive flood around that time in history. So we can kind of verify that there was a massive flood during that time. We haven't found the actual ark, but we can say we're pretty darn sure that there was a massive flood that wiped out everything. And so Noah, they think it took him 75 years to build the ark. For 75 years, he acted on God's hunch. He acted on what God told him. And just like I put my house on the market, even though it didn't make any earthly sense, God still came through. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to wait 75 years. I only had to wait a couple. But sometimes God does that. He says, I'm going to have you do this thing, or I'm going to be there. I'm going to make this work out for you. And we wear ourselves out trying to figure it out. We wear ourselves out trying to do it ourselves. Or we get like, God, did you really say that? Because I feel like you said this, but I'm not seeing the evidence of this. I don't understand. What's going on here? Did you really say that? How many times do you think Noah asked himself, man, did God really say that? Am I crazy? Was that a hallucination? Did I have too much wine to drink that night or something? Like, how many times do you think Noah wondered if it was all hokum? Because we can't lean on what we understand. Proverbs says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. I often use the word myopic when I talk about what I see. I want you to imagine having like goggles that are all blacked out except for one little tiny place. And that's all you can see. We have a student, he's probably in 6th grade now, and he can only see like down here. His vision, he's got an issue with his eyes, and he can only see the very bottom. So in order for him to see anything, he has to go like this. That's what our view is of the world compared to God. He sees all of it. He sees the hearts of other people. He sees the political stuff. He sees what's going on in the spirit realm. He knows what he made you to be. He understands the conflict in your own heart. And so when he says go do something, you're like, God, that don't make any sense. He's like, I know. It would if you could see it from his perspective, but we can't see it from his perspective. Our perspective is so myopic. We have just a tiny little pinprick of sight of what's going on in the world around us. But he sees all of it. And so when God says, do this, you need to go along to get along. Stop bucking the system. Stop trying to figure it out. We can't only do it if it makes sense. Because if we did it only if it made sense, then it would be logic and not faith. But we're called to be people of faith. We're called to be people who build boats in our backyards. We're called to be people who put a 1-bedroom house on a busy street on the market and trust that the Lord can sell that. So I want you, your homework, if you will, your assignment, if you want to grow in your faith this week, if you want to get closer to the Lord, then read the story of Noah. It's a good story to read. Read the whole story, like not just once the rain stops, because it's another year. Not only does it rain for 40 days, Noah and his family spend a whole year living on that ark. A whole year in a stinky boat full of animals. They're just floating along for a year. Have any of you who have families, can you imagine being cooped up with your kids for a whole year and you can't go outside and you can't send them outside? They didn't have Netflix back then. You know? So I want you to read the story of Noah this week. And in your quiet time with the Lord, I want you to ask him, is there something you've told me to do that I have not done because it doesn't make sense? What is it that I am not acting on faith? What is it you want me to do, to think, to believe? I did have to put my house on the market, but I had to spend a good year just believing that God would do it. What is it, Lord, you need me to believe in order for your plans to come to fruition? And all of God's children said, amen.